here on the podcast, we are doing part 2 of a podcast, kind of mini series that I started last week that got really good feedback. So I'm so excited to be doing this. This is the How Can I Get Back to Running Like I Used to series. This episode is about setting yourself up for success. That's what part 2 is named after. Okay. So there's a couple things here. This is going to be about scheduling, taking an inventory about what's stopped you in the past or some nuisances or injuries that have come up in the past. Also, we're going to talk about things that you can do to make sure ultimately that you're setting yourself up and laying the foundation so that later on in the training process, you can start to experience that exponential growth that is so exciting to be part of, but that doesn't happen right away. So we want to make sure that we start off in the correct manner. Again, part 1, if you haven't listened to it yet, make sure you do. You have to stop this podcast, listen to part 1 before this, but it's definitely really good. I had a lot of people reach out. I'm so excited that people have gained a lot from that podcast. That is for sure. I know for me, it's just as important for me to hear these things as it is for anybody else. So I take a lot from it as well, because it definitely helps me with my own athletic journey. Step 1, or the first bullet point that we're going to talk about today in setting yourself up for success, is to avoid grand proclamations. Okay. That can come later if that's your style, but this is still early in the process. Okay. So avoid grand proclamations really early in the process. There is subset of goal setting society where, laying out that big, hairy, audacious goal early in the process can help inspire you and motivate you for major action. And I think there is definitely a time and a place for that big, hairy, audacious goal, but not at this point. I think ultimately that can ring hollow very quickly. And also, it's so far away, it's so in the distance that it's not going to have a huge effect on you. In fact, it could ultimately lay the groundwork for some frustration and some issues that you may have when you realize, wow, I am nowhere close to that right now. And I think that can be so discouraging, especially when we fall off the wagon a little bit, or we're a little wobbly. We're not off the tracks, but we're a little wobbly. And that's not great. Also, there's a social element to here where you might want to, tell people in your life what you're trying to do. But if you're doing it so early in the process, it might set yourself up for a position where you have to keep refining and changing your goals, or you don't want to be in a spot where you're continually making grand proclamations that don't come true. Because in the end, if you do that, it's kind of like the little boy that cried wolf, and you don't want to be in that situation, right? This means a lot to us, and we don't want to be kind of caught up in our own bravado and then ultimately be in a situation where people aren't taking us seriously because of our track record for, again, saying wild, outlandish things and then not getting them, which is fine. Big, hairy, audacious goals aren't always achieved, but not even coming within like a country mile of those goals. And that's a situation that we don't want to put ourselves in. Okay, so the first one is avoid grand proclamations at this stage in the process. Maybe those can come later if that's your style. Okay. Number 2, create a slot or a schedule that actually works for you with regards to when you're going to be doing your running and the various other things that you need to do to supplement your running. Okay. And that means not setting a schedule that is a pie in the sky or that would require you to change everything about your life. That's just too much to take on right in the beginning. Okay. Especially when there's so much other stuff that you need to do, right? You can't have these completely wholesale changes across the board in every area of your life at the same time, because then you don't have a priority. Then when something changes or flips, or something slows down in your life, you don't know where to pick and choose in terms of what to move around. Okay. So say you're someone who isn't, normally a morning person, or you normally wake up at like 6 o'clock, and say, I'll use myself as an example. I wake up at 6 o'clock and I'm with my kids from 6 to 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay. Now, in order for me to do a run, say I want to schedule 45 minutes to an hour of activity time, including warm up and all that stuff, I would need to wake up at 4:30 to get that done. So from 5 to 6, I'm working out, but even then I have to factor in the shower and all that. Running before that time would seriously upend my life in a way that is unsustainable. And this isn't an academic exercise. I've tried to do this. I used to be a morning runner and I loved it, but it was before I had kids. And ultimately, for me, in the situation I am with my family and the way my wife and I parent, because she leaves at like 7 o'clock for her work day, I'm not in a position to run that early or to do an early morning workout, but I can work out at 8 o'clock, and that works well with my schedule. Also, I could run later at night, and that also would work well in my schedule, running, say, at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock or something like that. But that morning hour, say I scheduled that, like I'm going to run at 4:30, like I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm going to do some David Goggins type, life revolution. And it's not shot at David Goggins. I'm just trying to like amp up the menace here. And then, so I'm scheduling a time that is really going to be tricky to make work. All of a sudden, I'm not setting myself up for success. In fact, I'm doing the opposite because I'm making my life immeasurably harder, generally speaking, and specifically harder than it needs to be because I have other time slots that I can make this work. So let's just use those, okay? You might have to tweak things a little bit to fit these things in. That's fine. Don't go for the wholesale change. There's enough changing already, right? You're going out, you're restarting your athletic journey, you got big dreams ahead. There's no reason to upend every single element of your life because that's ultimately going to certainly not set you up for success. In fact, it will pretty much do the opposite. You'll almost be guaranteed to not work out, and you might be setting yourself up for some injuries too, especially if you start shortchanging other elements of your schedule, like warming up and strength training. We'll talk about that in later episodes. That could end up like really setting you back. That's for sure. So, number 3, inventory of past injuries and nuisances. So I'm saying nuisances in terms of like the injury stuff. Again, a nuisance is more of like, an injury sparkle, so to speak. So something that is, you wouldn't qualify as an injury, but something that's bothered you kind of off and on over time. Okay. These things don't just go away with time. So say you haven't really worked out in months or maybe even years, or maybe like a little bit here, a little bit there, but not enough to really accrue the kind of stress that would, cause any of those past issues to pop up. Okay. You should not assume that those issues are now gone. In fact, you should assume the opposite. Okay. They are still in there. Okay. Your individualized injury history is unique to you. So there's going to be some general principles in terms of injury prevention that we should all take into account. Those are good and they are best practices, and we'll talk about those next episode. With that said, there's some things specifically to you that you need to take into account. For me, I know for sure that when I don't do strength work and doing like an active mobility warm up that involves some decent glute activation, I know that my left knee is gonna be like a 3 out of 10, 2 out of 10 on the discomfort scale. Like that's just the way it goes. And it's super annoying, but I know that about myself now. So what about your running journey that has those same things? Take them into account now. Either write them down or have an internal list of the things that have bothered you in the past and proactively address those. So that might mean, say you went to a PT and you got exercises around, your Achilles or your knee or your foot or whatever. Start working on those exercises now. Don't wait to see if the injury comes back. Okay. Proactively address all of these issues because I guarantee you rest is not going to solve them. What rest did was basically take the stimulus away that was bringing that to the fore. It's kind of like if you have a problem with your house where if it rains a ton, we're talking like 2 inches of rain per hour, that there's always this one area of your house that has flooding. Okay. Now, say you don't address it and it hasn't rained in 6 months. Okay. Now, that means you probably haven't had any flooding in the last 6 months. That's great news, right? It means there's a little bit of rain here, a little bit of rain there, but nothing to the accumulation that would cause any amount of flooding in that part of your basement or whatever. Now, that does not mean that the flooding situation has been solved. It just means that the environment that would cause that flooding situation just hasn't happened yet. And that's exactly what's going on with your body. Okay, so make sure you're proactively addressing those issues so that they don't continue to come up. Ultimately, because as you get older, these issues are going to be more and more of an issue because that's just the way that aging works. Okay, so your recovery time might be a little bit slower than it used to, or maybe less stress is needed for these things to pump up in the first place. Okay, all things to take into consideration. Use your past knowledge, you know, for good. Okay. You paid tuition for that education. You might as well use it. All right. You paid, that tuition that you paid was the time off and the time at the PT and all that stuff. Utilize what you learned so that you can set yourself up for success moving forward. Again, from 3 goes right into 4. Basically, they're the same thing. Create a sustainable warm-up and strength mobility routine that addresses general strength in your individual problem areas. We're going to talk about the problem areas. You can handle that in the general best practices of strength and mobility routines. There's a lot of people, and this is like the golden age of this information right now, and it keeps getting better and better, who have put out some really good stuff on YouTube and other mediums of just the stuff that runners need to know in order to perform at a high level and just have basic level strength and mobility. I love the work that Dwayne Scotty has done. He's the Healthy Runner podcast and his great website. And he's an unbelievable PT who has helped me personally, not just with the resources he's created, but I actually saw him in person. He does great stuff. And there's a lot of other people as well. Brody Sharp has been on the podcast, as has Dwayne, and countless other people who focus on runners who have put out so much information that you're going to have plenty at your disposal. So go out and use it. All right. That's number 4. Number 5, the hockey stick graph of running ramp up. Right. Lay the foundation now. Think about a graph where along the y-axis is basically a graph of how much stress or stimuli or miles run or time on feet, whatever you're graphing out for the x-axis, is that you basically it's like a hockey stick model where it's going horizontally. It's ramping up a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. All right. And then near the end of that graph, you're going to see explosive exponential growth at the end. Okay. Right now, you're at the beginning of that graph. Okay. Right now, you're laying the foundation for that exponential growth later. That growth isn't happening now. Okay. So don't fall into the trap of ramping up quickly. Right now, we're just get to a sustainable level. This is going to vary wildly for a lot of different people. Okay. But you're at a point now where you're not taking on too much right away so that you can stay healthy and you can continue to build. Don't go for all right, I want to be at 40 miles. Say you're right now sustainable and like a good stimulus for you is 20 miles a week spread over 5 days or 6 days. Okay. You shouldn't be on a mission to get to 40. You should be on a mission to stay in that 20 to say 32 miles a week for this extended period of time, slowly building up, okay, so that you can lay that foundation along with the strength and mobility work that you're doing, also building up your resistance to the work that you're doing, right? You want that musculoskeletal endurance, which you haven't really probably accrued in the last, 6 to 9 months or whatever, how long you've been kind of away from running, so that once you've laid that foundation over the next 2 to 3 months, again, this is highly individualized, that you can start ramping it up later. And that's how you want to approach it. Okay. You don't want to have this quick buildup into a plateau later that would require you to then deal with all the injuries and setbacks that would come from that. Okay. So be patient. Think of that hockey stick graph where it stays horizontal with slight build up, and then it shoots up vertically near the end once you've laid the foundation and things can start to really get exciting. Okay, now, next episode, we're going to talk much more about training. All right, what to think about and how to do it early in the process. And we're going to couple that with the strength side. I'm not, that's not my game, but I will talk about some of the best practices that I've learned from others. But before we do 6 and 7, before we get there, I want to talk about Amazfit really quick. Amazfit is a GPS watch brand that I've been using now for 2 months. They're amazing. They're in over 90 countries, millions of users. In fact, it's such a good brand that not only do I use it, who cares what brand Matt Shittum's using, right? How about Ruth Croft, winner of UTMB 2025, Rod Farvard, Grant Fisher, Gabby Thomas, right? Track, road, trail, ultra, runners of all capabilities, but some of the best people in the world are using Amazfit, and for good reason. They have amazing watches and competitively priced. I wear the T-Rex 3 Pro, which is an adventure watch. Comparable models from other brands are close to $1,000. This one's $400, and it has all everything that you would want in this kind of watch. With that said, competitively priced. It's unbelievable. The Balance 2 is probably best for road runners because it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, stuff that you wouldn't need if you're mostly on the road. Balance 2 is $299. Okay? Has everything you're ever going to want. With that said, you also get a promo code using Rambling at checkout. That's right. You can save some dough using Rambling at checkout. Also, there's a link in the show notes. You get long-lasting battery life that will last you weeks. There's no subscriptions. It's global brand, accessible, and competitively priced. I can't say enough about this watch. I love it. And for what it's worth, a lot of people have commented me on how this watch actually looks just walking around. Or people see me on Instagram, say, hey, what kind of watch is that? That looks great. I couldn't agree more. I'm not the most stylish guy. It's the only piece of it's the only piece of clothing or anything that I have on my body that people actually compliment. But I shouldn't say that. People like ASICS shoes too. But just walking around day to day, this is the thing that gets the compliments, and for good reason. Go check out AmazeFit today. That's mazefid.com/US. Also, most importantly, the link in the show notes, which helps you save money and supports the show. So let's get into numbers 6 and 7. Okay. Number 6, aim for 30 to 60 minutes of time on feet on days that you're going to be working out. Okay. That is not merely running. All right. I said time on feet for a reason. Okay. Maybe you're running 1.5 to 2.5 miles a day as you start this journey. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. With that said, that shouldn't be the end of your activity that day. Okay. That's totally fine for running. Okay. That's a really good place to start. It might be the absolute appropriate stimulus that your body needs at this stage in the process. With that said, you can do more than that just from a walking perspective. And if you've had a lot of time off from running, then you might be in a situation where you want to be more active generally, not just have big running goals that you want to achieve. Okay. So aim for 30 to 60 minutes, time on feet in that session. Okay. So even if it means you run for 20 minutes, then have that next 10 to 40 minutes of walking. And there's 2 different ways of doing this. Okay. You can do that interspersed walk run. So that's some people who would do, a lot of people might know this from recovering from injury. So maybe it's, run for 3 minutes, walk for a minute, run for 5 minutes, walk for 2 minutes, right? That kind of interspersed walk run. Some people use this even on race day. The Galloway method is known internationally for people who, they can't just go out and run a marathon. Or if they could, it's not going to be the most efficient way for them to do it. So they approach it in a walk-run way and can do really well. People have actually BQ'd using that method, which is really intriguing. The other way of doing this is just dividing it up. Okay, this is what I like to do. And so say I'm going to go out and run, for 30 minutes. Okay, go out, 30-minute run. For me, that's, a little over 3 miles. All right, I'm done after 30 minutes. I don't want that to be the end of it. Okay. I'm at a point now where not only do I want to get better at running, but I have some weight to lose personally. So I don't want to just only work out for 30 minutes a day. I want to do more than that, and I have time to do it. So let's go. So what do I do for the next, 10 to 20 or 30 minutes? I'm going to walk with purpose over like a hilly terrain just to get more steps in, be more active. That walking is certainly helpful. You might just want to do it with your dog. There's a lot of ways incorporating this that's not going to feel like a workout, but it's going to help you a couple ways. You'll be more active, which is great. It's going to increase your your tolerance to just being on your feet, which if say you're sitting at a desk all day, you're going to need it anyway. It's great mentally and emotionally. It's super healthy to be out there walking, especially if you turn off the music and the podcast, not this one, and the audiobooks, and just kind of enjoy nature. And it allows you to just have more time on feet, which ultimately is going to help you lay the foundation for the success that you want to get later. So that's numbers 6 and 7 of 30 to 60 minutes time on feet and incorporating a walk run method to get that as you progress in your running journey. Now, once you can start running, 30, 40, 50 minutes at a time straight, then this part can just fade away. Okay, but early in the process, you might not be at a point where you can have that kind of mileage on your body of running 30, 60 minutes straight, which is fine. Get that walking in there, either interspersed or divided. It's going to help you out, and you're going to be glad you did. Thank you so much for listening to this. I can't wait to put out episode 3 of this series. I shouldn't say episode 3, part 3 of this series next week. If you have any questions or you have anything that you want to share with me about your journey, or you have any questions or comments you want me to include in a future episode, you can either find me on Instagram at rambling_runner, or you can send me an email at ramblingrunnerpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you to ASICS and Amazfit for sponsoring this podcast. Check out their links in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and happy running.